This is a story about how an evil mother planned on hanging her only child. The reason will shock you. Watch till the end. The rain had been falling for hours, drumming steadily on the rusted zinc roof of the small mud brick house. Inside, the room was dim, lit only by a flickering kerosene lamp placed near the door. A thin veil of smoke curled toward the ceiling, dancing through the cracks in the wood above. The scent of palm oil and old fabric hung in the air. Amaka sat on the edge of the rope-woven bed, her back straight, her arms trembling as she held the small bundle wrapped in faded Ankara cloth. The baby had stopped crying. The quiet was thick, unnatural. Even the lizards that usually scratched behind the cupboard had fallen still. She stared at the rough wall in front of her, eyes unfocused, lips pressed tightly together. Her chest rose and fell slowly, like a woman waiting for something that would never come. The baby, tiny, fragile, beautiful, had been born under a tree behind the house, with only the midwife from across the stream to help her. No father beside her. No family. Her mother had died just before the last dry season, and her father had not spoken to her since the pregnancy began. She named the child Chica. A name that meant God is greater. She whispered it into the baby's ear the moment he let out his first cry. That night, she believed, just for a moment, that things might be different. But the belief cracked quickly. The village women whispered when she passed. The market women refused to lend her credit. Her aunt, who once let her sleep on the cold cement floor of her parlor, sent her away with a scowl and a slammed door. The father of the child, Uche, had vanished. His family pretended they didn't know her. They said she was lying, looking for someone to blame. She tried to work. She sold groundnuts by the roadside, sometimes plantain when she could get some on credit. But no one bought. They called her names. Said the child was a curse. That evening, with the rain growing heavier, Amaka stood in the middle of the room, holding Chica close. She could feel his breath against her neck. Soft. Faint. Warm. She closed her eyes and tried to imagine a life where things had gone right. She imagined a house in the city. A job. Friends. A husband who laughed gently and held her hand. But when she opened her eyes, she was still in that room. Still alone. She looked at the thin rope she had once used to tie down her cooking pot when the wind threatened to carry it off the stove outside. Her hands moved without her knowing. The baby didn't stir as she did it. He was asleep, unaware of the storm building behind his mother's eyes. She tied the rope to the wooden beam near the ceiling, her movement slow, almost calm. And then she stopped. The baby stirred. A tear slid down her cheek. She whispered something. She whispered something. A prayer, maybe. Or a goodbye. Her lips moved, barely parting, and the words clung to her breath like fog. "Forgive me, Chica." Her voice cracked as she said it. She held him to her chest, tighter this time, as though her arms could still shield him from a world that had already shut its doors. His tiny fingers clutched at her blouse, not knowing the weight pressing against her heart. Not knowing how close the edge had come. She stood there, rocking him. Back and forth. Back and forth. The rope swung slightly in the breeze that slipped through the broken window. It hung there like a question, unfinished. She turned her head, eyes resting on it. Then on the child. Then she sank to her knees. Something inside her broke, not loudly, not with a scream, but with a kind of silence that no one hears. A silence deeper than grief. A silence of someone who has run out of fight. She didn't go through with it. Not yet. Instead, she placed Chica gently in the basket lined with rags and old wrappers. He stirred again, whimpering softly, as if feeling the shift in her spirit. Amaka rose and sat back on the bed. Her palms were sweaty. Her eyes, dry now, stared at the floor. The truth was, she hadn't wanted to kill him. She just wanted it all too. The looks from strangers who thought they knew her story. She wanted rest. Just a pause in the storm. A moment to breathe without her chest tightening like the rope above. That rope had become something else. Not a plan. A cry. An act of desperation no one had seen. She hadn't told anyone what she was going through. Not the old pastor who passed her house every Sunday. Not Mama Nkechi, who sometimes gave her leftover yam peels. Not even herself, fully. She heard a knock at the door. Soft. 2 taps. She didn't answer. It came again. The knock came again, 2 short, patient taps, then silence. Amaka stayed still. Her heartbeat slowed as if her body didn't want to draw attention to itself. She didn't want to be seen. Not now. Not like this. But something about the knock lingered in the room, like a scent. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't harsh. It was familiar. She stood slowly, legs stiff from kneeling. She looked at the rope again, then back at Chica, now sleeping, a soft sigh escaping his lips. She stepped toward the door and opened it just enough to see who it was. Nena. Of all people. Nena stood barefoot in the rain, holding a torn umbrella that did little to keep her dry. She looked thinner than Amaka remembered, her wrapper tied tightly around her chest, face drawn but kind. They hadn't spoken in months. Not since the village started whispering. Not since Nena had turned away that day at the stream, pretending not to see her. I was passing, Nena said quietly, her voice barely above the rain. I heard your lamp was still on. Amaka didn't reply. She didn't open the door wider. She didn't smile. Nena looked down at her feet, shifting slightly. Then she looked up again. I brought Gary. It's not much. But it's something. From under her shawl, she pulled out a small nylon bag, swollen with soaked Gary, tied neatly at the top. She stretched it forward, her hand shaking just slightly. Amaka stared at it. Then slowly, she opened the door wider, allowing Nena to step in. The warmth of the room, though slight, wrapped around them both. The silence settled again. Nena's eyes moved around the space. She didn't ask about the rope. But she saw it. Her gaze lingered on it only for a breath. Then she looked at the baby in the basket. Chica, she asked softly. Amaka nodded. He looks like you. Amaka wanted to speak, but the words were stuck behind her teeth. She hadn't expected kindness. Not from anyone. Nena stepped closer to the baby, crouched, and touched his tiny foot gently. Chica stirred and let out a tiny squeal. It was the first time Amaka had heard someone speak to her son without scorn in their voice. I remember when you used to dance, Nena said suddenly. Back when we were still in school. You said you wanted to be on TV one day. Amaka's lips parted, then closed. That dream felt like a lifetime ago. She finally sat down again. Nena joined her. For a long while, they didn't speak. The rain softened to a drizzle. When Amaka finally found her voice, it was raw. I almost did something, she said. Something I can't name. Nena didn't flinch. She just looked at her, eyes heavy with understanding. I know, she said. That's why I came. Amaka stared at her. How? Nena reached into her wrapper and pulled out a small pendant, a bent brass token with a faded symbol. You gave me this once. Said it was for strength. When my father died. I didn't forget. They sat there, the rope still swaying slightly above them. Neither of them mentioned it again. But Amaka's eyes returned to it one more time. And this time, she got up, untied it from the beam, and dropped it into the corner of the room. The rope landed softly on the floor, a useless thing now, limp and harmless. Amaka didn't look at it again. She moved back toward the baby's basket and knelt beside it, her hands brushing gently over the edge. Chica slept on, peaceful, unaware of the weight that had lifted from the room. Amaka breathed deeply, her chest loosening for the first time in weeks. Behind her, Nena quietly took the wet shawl from her shoulders and hung it on a nail near the door. Then she sat again, folding her legs beneath her. She looked around the small room, cracked walls, a few battered cooking pots in the corner, a rusting mirror barely hanging on the wall, but she didn't speak of the poverty. She didn't make suggestions. She just stayed. That was more than most had done. I can come tomorrow, she said after a while. Help you at the market, maybe carry Chica while you sell. Amaka shook her head slowly. There's nothing to sell. Nobody buys from me. They'll buy, Nena said, almost stubbornly. If I sit with you, they'll talk less. Amaka raised her eyebrows. You ready to let them talk about you too? Nena gave a short laugh. Let them. They've talked before. They'll talk again. A small smile touched Amaka's mouth. It was faint. Faint, but real. She shifted, resting her back against the wall. Her bones ached, but the heaviness in her chest had eased a little. Outside, the rain had faded into a fine mist, the kind that made everything smell of wet earth and. They sat in silence again, listening to the baby's breathing, to the rustle of the wind through the gaps in the wood. Then Amaka spoke again, her voice softer this time. You know the rope? I wasn't going to do it to him. Nena turned her head. I know, she said. You were going to do it to yourself. Amaka's throat tightened. She nodded once, slowly. I thought, maybe it would be better if I just went. Nena didn't say anything at first. Then she reached out, took Amaka's hand in hers. Her grip was firm. Real. If you go, she said quietly, who will tell him about the dancing? About the TV dreams? About how strong you were before the world got heavy? Amaka looked at her, eyes glossy but steady. I don't feel strong. You don't have to feel it, Nena replied. You just have to stay. The wind shifted. Somewhere in the distance, a cock crowed early, confused by the dim light and the wet dawn. The night was ending. The sky outside had begun to lighten, casting a pale gray glow through the cracks in the wooden shutters. Morning had come slowly, like it was unsure if it should arrive. Amaka sat there with Nena, still holding her hand, the warmth between them more comforting than any blanket. The baby stirred again, this time opening his eyes, blinking into the soft light. He made a sound, something between a yawn and a cry, and Amaka leaned forward, lifting him gently from the basket. She pressed him to her chest, kissed the top of his head. Chica was awake. And so was she. The rope still lay in the corner, but it no longer had power. It was just rope now. Nothing more. That day, Amaka didn't go to the market. She didn't need to. She sat in her room, fed her baby, and for the first time in a long while, let herself cry, not from pain, but from the slow realization that maybe, just maybe, she could make it through another day. And the next one. With help. With grace. With someone beside her. Because sometimes, all it takes is one knock on the door. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment with your thoughts. Your opinion matters, and you never know who might need to read this today.